1968. This conflict was not only about civil rights and the anti-Catholic laws. It was also involved heavily the argument about Northern Ireland's national identity and whether it should be part of the UK, like the Protestants wanted, or part of the Republic of Ireland, like the Catholics wanted. Back to the Civil Rights March, William Craig claimed that the movement was a front for the IRA and sent cops to break it up. They used excessive force, causing anger and even more riots. The British government felt they could no longer be uninvolved and forced the government to make reforms, but it did in no way meet the demands of the civil rights movement. Two major Unionist or Protestant marches happened in 1969, the March of the Orangemen and the March to the Siege of Derry. The Battle of Bogside, which happened because of a Protestant march, lasted from March 12th to the 15th. The Protestants marched past the heavily Catholic area, and there were fights, and the RUC intervened. The rioting intensified, and civilian and policemen were bombed. The British troops were sent in, but barricades had been put up by the RUC, and British were not permitted. The British troops let them be no-go areas. The IRA later split in two, the official IRA and the provisional IRA. The introduction of the internment and the protests following caused an intensified amount of the blood, bringing the body count up even more. Internment was introduced in 1971, and 350 people were immediately arrested. Within the next 48 hours, 17 would be dead from protesting, and there was, from then on, constant violence and protesting against internment. Then, in the beginning of 1972, there was Bloody Sunday. The NICRA organized a march to protest internment and the ban on marches. To try and keep it peaceful, the IRA was asked to stay away. Barricades had been put up by British troops to stop marches from entering the city. They were confronted and then opened fire on the marchers, killing 14 and injuring 13 people. After Bloody Sunday, there was far less favor of the British, and the British embassy in Dublin was burnt to the ground. The British imposed direct rule from Westminster and suspended Northern Ireland government. Then the NRA launched a bombing campaign, which bombed public places in both Ireland and British mainland. This inspired the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Then, in the 1980s and late 1970s, strikes within the prison started. Prisoners used the blanket protest, where they refused to wear prison clothes and only wore blankets, and also the dirty protest, where prisoners refused to clean and would spread excrement on the walls. When none of this worked, the prisoners started going on hunger strikes. Bobby Sands was the first hunger striker in 1981, and him and 9 others died because of it. Many viewed them as martyrs. Peace talks were attempted in 1996 after other failed agreements and declarations, like the Anglo-Irish Agreement and the Downing Street Declaration. But sadly, peace talks were ended along with the ceasefire. But 2 years later, in 1998, on April 10th, the Good Friday Agreement was made. Throughout this 30-year time period, over 3,600 people have died and countless injured physically and psychologically. Remnants of the conflict still remain in the minds of those affected and in Northern Ireland society today.